Okay, hopefully this is gonna work. All right, well, it's been a million years since I've made a YouTube video. I think the last time I made a video was in 2009, and it was a health lecture at a Jazzercise or a Curves or something. Um, yeah, I felt compelled to make a video. I'm sure many people are going to be posting stuff on YouTube for several weeks now, expressing their upset and angst about the election. I felt compelled to make a video just to express my perspective, which might be a little different from other people's. I'm sure there are other people who feel the same way I do. So I'm interested to see what I find on YouTube as well. Um, it's been really, really difficult. Um, Not so much for the reasons that you're hearing all over the place about. Um, but as far as the election itself, um, okay, I'm just gonna cut to the chase here. I'm pissed off. I'm really pissed off because I personally am not so surprised this happened. I don't know why so many people are so shocked that the outcome came out this way. Um, I wasn't, I was surprised. I wasn't expecting Trump to win, but I was expecting it to be so incredibly close. And of course, when you're expecting something to be so incredibly close, well, then guess what? The odds of the person, the underdog winning, um, expand significantly. So, what has been really irking me, even more so than a Trump presidency, which is pretty hard to swallow, but what has been irking me even more than that is the fact that the media and Democrats and all these other groups are just scratching their heads like how did this happen? How did this happen? I'll tell you how it happened. It's so easy. It's so simple. Okay, so in regards to how this all happened, the number one thing that for some reason people were not paying attention to was that the trend this election term was grassroots. That is the special word of the day, grassroots. So essentially, both sides, conservative and liberal, wanted a grassroots candidate. The conservatives chose Trump, the liberals chose Bernie Sanders. I was a big Bernie supporter. Millions and millions of people were big Bernie supporters. And the reason why they were big Bernie supporters is because they were absolutely disenchanted with the Democratic Party. They were absolutely fed up with having a Clinton dynasty. They were absolutely fed up with what I always call hashtag same shit different day. And that was even Clinton's campaign thing was we're just going to continue what Barack Obama started. A lot of people didn't want that. A lot of people were really looking for a true overhaul, and they knew with an establishment candidate it wasn't going to happen. So when Bernie came around and millions and millions and millions of people were supporting him and wanted him, the DNC, as we know, pretty much threw him under the bus, made sure that he could never become nominated. And as soon as that happened, that's when everything went to shit. As soon as Hillary became the Democratic nominee, for me personally, I was more devastated that day when Bernie didn't get it than even election day. Because I knew as soon as they said Hillary got it and Bernie was sabotaged and he couldn't continue, I was in full panic because not only was, I thought the better person not going to be able to run for president, but that meant that millions and millions of people who were so against Hillary Clinton were not going to vote for her. And that meant that Trump's chances increased exponentially. How are people not seeing this? I'm sure there are other people out there that are thinking the same way I am. I have seen some news articles online about this stuff, but overall, so many people, media, like, how did we not see this? And all of these groups that are just so distraught, and I understand they're, them being upset, but how could you have possibly thought, with the equation, the political equation that has been unfolding before us for the past year, how could you possibly think that Hillary Clinton would have run away with the election? And the thing is too, so what drives me crazy too is so many people now are like, well, that must mean that Trump wins. That must mean that half the country is racist. That's not true. Half the country is not racist. There are so many conservatives out there that are completely in support of gay marriage, in support of gay rights, women's rights, minority rights, you name it. But because Hillary and Trump were the only choices for the whole country, and conservatives, who millions of them, they didn't like Trump, they didn't want Trump, but they couldn't possibly vote for Hillary because of global policies, economic policies, which I can totally understand. So many people who headed to the polls voting for Trump, pretty much had a barf bag with them because they did not want that. Same as Hillary. How many people who voted for Hillary were really thrilled about voting for her? Not a lot. So, but because Bernie was out of the picture, if Bernie had been the Democratic nominee, you would have had all of his supporters and all of Hillary's supporters behind him. And even some freaking conservatives, who knows? I mean, there would have been so many more supporters behind Bernie Sanders. Even in May, when they did the polls before everything, they showed that Bernie Sanders was ahead of Trump 10 points and Hillary Clinton was behind Trump 2 points. So it pretty much was indicative of how this outcome of the actual election came out. So I had to rant about that because I don't understand how people are not understanding how this whole thing unfolded. I mean, I was yakking to people months ago about that, and I don't know. I just don't get it. And now the other thing that's irking me right now is after the storm, all these weepy liberals, and I'm a liberal, okay? I am as liberal as you can get on social issues and social freedoms. Um, I'm going to sound insensitive, but if I see one more weepy woman on television who is saying, I had to tell my daughter. I have a 3-year-old daughter, okay? If she was a little older, what I'd be telling her without a tear in my eye is, all right, now it's time for us to get our heads on level heads, and really think a couple of steps ahead of the system and really think about what we're going to do now to fight for our rights. We're not going to, we're not going to be weepy. We're not going to be mopey, and be Chicken Little and say the world's going to end. Now is the time more than ever to have a fire in our belly and to do something about it. Just, even more so than if this was a Clinton presidency. I almost feel like in some ways it would be even more dangerous because everyone in the country would, well, except for the diehard Trump supporters who knows what they would do, but everyone else in the country would go back to being complacent Americans. That was always my big worry if Hillary got the nomination, would be millions of Americans just then, because it's the establishment again, kind of maybe complaining for 30 seconds and then going back to watching their Dancing with the Stars and, living their lives as nothing had ever happened, and there would be no protests, there would be no people taking it to the streets and really having that drive, that fire in their belly about making change. Now, with Trump and who the hell knows what's going to happen, this is the opportunity for Americans to actually stop being complacent and actually make an effort to make some real significant social changes. And that's the great thing about the country is, for decades, we have been able to have it a little easier in some ways. or not have to protest as much or not have to think as much about politics. But with the changing times, this isn't even 1995 anymore. We have an internet. We have a whole generation who is being raised on the internet. We have information that we never could have possibly imagined having 20 years ago. Knowing things that back in the day the establishment never would have thought we could have known. And that's another reason why Hillary didn't win, WikiLeaks and whatever. I mean, all the things that came out. I mean, God. We're dealing with a whole other perspective here. So, where are they going with that? I don't know. So, yeah, it's time. Wipe the tears from your eyes, take a breath, and start to think about what you can do to make a difference, and what you can do in your community to get together and get involved in making sure that if any social, moral freedom threats come our way in the country, what are we going to do? We're not going to just whine about it and then continue watching Netflix. We can't anymore. We can't do it. It's time for us to take action. And that's not a bad thing. So, yeah, just thought I would say something. I'm trying to see this whole thing as a positive. I'm trying to put a positive spin on it, because being Chicken Little about the whole thing is not helping. Is not helping the situation. And now more than ever, we have to keep that fire going and really not forget, and really make sure that we're all involved in the political process now. Every little thing that comes out, every little detail, we need to make sure that we're educated on it and informed. And yeah, it might be a hassle. It might take away from our day-to-day life, but it needs to be done. And I gotta say, okay, one more bitch on my part, as far as another thing that's been irking me to no end are the celebrities coming out saying they're going to move out of the country. Oh my God. Well, I'm just going to move out of the country now. This is just unacceptable. First of all, asshole, if you're a true American, you stay on your home territory and you fight the good fight. You self-righteous son of a bitch. So, I know it's a little bitter, it's a little nasty, but seriously, I mean, making an announcement like that is so self-absorbed and so self-righteous. What are you expecting from that? It's like, I honestly, and I don't easily get offended at stuff because I think it's a waste of my time and energy. That was so offensive to me for someone to actually say that, and it's just a joke. Like I said before, it's like, no, you don't leave the country. You stay here with your, firmly planted, and you take steps to make a change. You fight the good fight, like the hundreds of millions of Americans here who are working their asses off trying to, make a living and work day to day, who can't, gallivant off to fucking Italy or wherever the hell you're going to in your, chateau or whatever. So I just had to get that out there. I'm sorry. So that's it for me. Thanks for watching, or not. And I'd love it. I mean, if I actually post this onto YouTube, I'd love to hear some comments, maybe, about, if anyone else, feels the same way or not, because the whole point, we have to get a dialogue started. That's the whole point of this disconnect, is we have to sit down with everyone and really talk stuff out, because obviously there was no talking and no listening. So, all right. Thank you very much, and God bless America.